NBA Finals going on right now while we're getting ready for the 2025-2026 season to talk about it all and whether or not Darius Garland needs to go. Tim Bontemps going to join us right now. ESPN NBA senior writer. Find him on Twitter at Tim Bontemps. He's on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline. Tim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hello, guys. How you doing?
First, thank you very much for the time. We know that you're traveling right now, so we do appreciate the time here, Tim. I want to start off with the Cavs first. Do you think that to get to the NBA Finals in 2026, that Darius Garland has to be removed from the equation for the Cavaliers?
No, I don't think he has to be. I think the Cavs have to become a more capable team defensively on the perimeter, which doesn't mean they have to get rid of him, but they do need to upgrade in terms of the guys who can defend on the perimeter. Because I think when you saw the way Indiana attacked them in that second round series, that was a question I had about this team all the way through. It was a problem that came up in that series. Now, look, Darius Garland was not really healthy at any point in that series. I'm sure Cavs would argue that if he was healthy, they could potentially outscore the Pacers in the series, and they might be able to. I mean, the Cavs had an unbelievable offensive team all season long. But I think when you look at how the Pacers went through the East, and I think right now you have to assume the Pacers are the team that should deserve to be looked at as the favorites to get out of the East next year. The thing that they have successfully done against every team they've played other than the Thunder, who don't have any defensive weaknesses, is exploited the defensive weaknesses of the matchup that's put in front of them. And so if you're the Cavs, you have to know if you're going into a series with the Pacers, they're going to stress test your defense, and you have to be able to make up for that. And, you know, whether Darius Garland's on the team or not, or, you know, anybody's on the team or not, that's the question you have to answer is what are you going to do to negate the way the Pacers have been able to pick at a scab for whatever team they've played throughout these last couple of playoffs.
I mean, Tim, part of what I have tried to argue on why it might make sense to trade Darius is that the defense aside, and you just brought that up, of having that small backcourt, that combo is something that makes it vulnerable. But also, look at Evan Mobley and his trajectory as the unicorn that I think the Cavs organization thinks he could be. His usage rate is so low compared to guys that are supposed to be at the level that I think they think he's at. So effectively, he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And is he ever going to have the ball in his hands enough to make a difference when he's playing with two talented guards?
I mean, I don't think the argument to trade a guy is that we have too many good offensive players. That I think the argument should be if you want Evan Mobley to have the ball more, find ways to have him have the ball more, right? So I think he took very meaningful strides forward this year offensively. There still is room for him to grow to become, you know, the player that the Cavs hope he can be, which is a guy who could be a top, you know, truly a top five-ish kind of player in the league, a guy who could be the best player on a team that in theory could compete for and win a title. To your point, he's got to have a higher usage rate offensively to get there. I would say he's on a very good path right now. And I wouldn't say that you need to trade. Like I said, I don't think it should be, well, we have this other good offensive player, we should get rid of him and have a worse offensive player so that Evan Mobley can shoot the ball more, have the ball in his hands more. I think it should just be, let's find ways to make sure Evan Mobley has the ball in his hands more, and that will lead to good things for the Cavs.
You know, part of the issue, though, Tim, is that Darius on his contract, he's making, $40 million next year, escalates to 45. He's eligible for an extension. And at the same time, I watched him in that elimination game. He was injured. You said he was injured. And now we found out with the surgery that he has to get, he definitely was injured. So there's no question he has toughness. He played through it. But he also took more shots in that elimination game as somebody that had no burst. His speed was obviously compromised, wasn't the same player. And that's what I'm talking about, that mindset of the two guards monopolizing the basketball in a way that I think could be preventing Evan Mobley from taking that next big step.
I'll just repeat what I said. It doesn't make a lot of sense to just get rid of a good offensive player to have another guy shoot more. So I think
get a better defense, get more length, get more athleticism defensively.
That's a different question.
So how do you get those guys? You have to trade somebody that's worthwhile.
That's not what you just said, though. So what you asked was, do they need to get rid of Darius Garland to have Evan Mobley shoot more? And I think the answer to that is no. I think there just has to be a focus on having Evan Mobley shoot more. I think those are two entirely different questions. If you want to argue the Cavs won't be good enough defensively if they have two small guards, that's one thing. Both the questions were Evan Mobley needs to shoot more, Darius Garland shooting too much. I don't think getting rid of Darius Garland to make Evan Mobley shoot more in a vacuum is the right way to look at it. That's all.
Is it the right way to look at it that you might have to trade Darius, because he has trade value, to actually get the length and athleticism that they so desperately need, that it was so eye-openingly obvious that they didn't have in that series against the Pacers?
Here's what I would say. There are a lot of point guards in the league, and there's a lot of centers in the league. And so if you're trying to trade for wings, or defensive length on the wing, which is what you're talking about, you're probably not trading for value if you're trading a point guard. So I think part of the thing about the way the Cavs are built is that, you could argue they have 2 point guards and 2 centers. Now, Evan Mobley is kind of a combo big. Donovan Mitchell's a combo guard, right? But they essentially have 2 point guards, or 2, lead guards, and 2 centers. And so if you start talking about, well, what should the Cavs do trade-wise, you're probably not going to get the kind of value back you would think for the players on the team because of the, sort of the positional value of where things are at around the league. Plus, we're also spent a few minutes talking about trading a guy who just had surgery on his big toe and is going to be out for a few months, right? So I would say that if it just from an abstract value standpoint, if you're trying to trade Darius Garland today, his value probably isn't what it could be. So I would say the Cavs just won 64 games, had one of the best seasons in the history of the franchise. They lost in the second round to what is a very good Pacers team. And one of their better players was compromised the whole series in Darius Garland. And so I would say, I think a reasonable thing to do is to try to upgrade on the margins, run it back next year, see how the team looks, and then go from there. Because it's not like this is not like the Lakers with LeBron James at 40 and you've got one last gasp at breaking through. I mean, the Cavs, all these guys are in their early to mid 20s, and they all are under contract. There's a ton of runway with the team. So I don't think this is I don't think this should be a massive panic situation, but it does bring up some interesting questions the way their season ended about how you should approach the summer and how you should approach next season. But I also don't think that this is the moment where it makes a lot of sense to completely alter where the team is at based off of, the circumstances that surrounded the way their season ended.
Tim Bontemps joining us on the show. Tim, for the record, I completely agree with you. I was going to ask you about Jared Allen, but I kind of want to go to something else because I'm very risk adverse here. And I want to know if you feel the same way because, we watched Golden State. I think a lot of teams tried to make themselves better to catch up with Golden State and ended up spiking their own chances for whatever reason in trades. And I do think that the second apron is scary, but it's also maybe the best practice to go forward because I think that you're stuck, and it feels to me, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, why would I trade away Darius Garland, great player, 2-time All-Star, for guys who are on the margin? It feels like we're going to get hosed here.
Well, I mean, look, if you're going to make, it's very hard. I don't really live in, and this is not a comment towards you guys whatsoever, but I don't live, like if you read our site, ESPN.com, I don't write out fake trade proposals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the reason I do that or don't do that is it's very hard in a vacuum to talk about like hypothetical trades, right? Like if you could turn Darius Garland into some awesome trade for the Cavs, sure. I think that would make sense to do. I would say that for just about anybody on every team, right? But there are a lot of extenuating circumstances here between the season the Cavs had last year, his current injury, and the lack of need around the league for point guards on most teams, because it's probably the deepest position in the league at the moment, that, it's one thing to say the Cavs should, trade Darius Garland and get a bigger wing and, get some more size and more defensive versatility. But this team was also a 64-win team because they had one of the best offenses of all time, and he was a big driver of that. And then they got in the playoffs and he was hurt. So, I would say that at least for next year, I think it's reasonable to go into the season and say, if our core guys are healthy, we think we can go toe-to-toe with Indiana or anybody else in the East, and then see where we stand against this Thunder team that certainly looks like, to me, it's going to be the best team in the league for a while, so we'll see. And I think the better question is, when you mentioned the second apron, do you want to pay Ty Jerome the full mid-level for a few years? Do you want to bring back Sam Merrill for, something approaching $10 million for a few years? Like, I think for this Cavs team, the questions are going to be more around those supporting pieces and how they fit and who should those pieces be and what should they do, rather than what are you going to do with the top four guys on the roster for a whole host of reasons. But I think the biggest one being they won 64 games last year and have a heck of a team.
Final one here. NBA Finals, Game 3 coming up tomorrow. Did Oklahoma City unlock Indiana? Or are they on their way to a title?
I mean, I would say they shut down Indiana for basically the entire first two games of the series. And the only reason that it's 1-1 is they missed some shots in the second half of Game 1, and they couldn't convert a single basket off turnovers basically the entirety of Game 1, and Tyrese Haliburton made a great play. But, Haliburton thrives on taking advantage of soft spots in the defense. The Thunder don't have any. The Thunder have the best player in the series by a significant margin. The Thunder can play virtually any style, both ends of the court. They were a 68-win team, had a historic point differential, I think are an all-time great team. And, to me, they have only through the first two games, despite the fact that it's 1-1, they certainly look like the team that I think should win in 5 games. Now, they do tend to have ruts offensively. We saw that in Game 1. It'll be interesting to see tomorrow in Game 3 if the Pacers can hit shots at home. They've shot the lights out, as you guys well know, throughout the playoffs. Andrew Nembhard has shot, 48% from 3 or something. He shot 29% in the regular season. So, we'll see how these games in Indy go. But, yeah, look, I thought the Thunder were the best team all season. I thought the only team that really could beat them in a series was either Denver with Jokic, who almost did, or Boston. Obviously, Boston isn't there. And so I think sometime in the next week to 10 days, we're going to see the Thunder win the title.
Tim Bontemps, ESPN. Find him on Twitter at Tim Bontemps. Tim, thank you very much for the time. Safe travels to you.
Anytime, guys. Talk to you soon.
He was on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram